So we all know how much AI is shaking things up, but when machines that can seem to think for themselves meet the creative arts, it's a particularly interesting intersection. We've got AI remixing original songs, composing their own tunes, generating playlists for us, blockchains helping us get rid of ticket touts. Some people predict that AI will even have its own #1 soon. The fact is, AI music can mean several very different things right now, which is why I'm very happy that we've got some people on the panel that know a lot more than me. Hello. Hello. To talk about exactly how our AI is changing music. On the panel, we've got Hazel Savage. You're basically kind of digital music royalty because you worked at Shazam, worked at Pandora, and now founder of Musiio, software which allows the music industry to process more data than ever and help solve content and curation problems.
That's okay, digital music royalty, that is going on my
right, slap it on the LinkedIn.
Straight up, quote there from CogX. Yeah. And also, I can't let it go by without pointing out how weird it is to be wearing headphones.
Yeah, I know.
You guys got to try it. It's really trippy. Yeah, it's insane. I'm also just really spaced out. Everyone can hear what I can hear. I feel like this is definitely the future.
It's kind of like a silent disco.
It's a little bit, but instead of awesome music, it's people talking about music, which is a little bit meta. Yeah. I like it. But yes, no, thank you so much for having me. I started a music AI company. We're based in Singapore, and we do curation and A&R for the music industry. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Great, thank you. Next up, we've got Sophie Gossens. Hello.
Hi.
She's a digital media expert with over 10 years experience as counsel to the music and technology industries. You focus particularly on all issues shaping the future of media industry from a technological, commercial, legal, but also policy-making standpoint. And you lead Reed Smith's entertainment media industry practice in Paris, and you work in London as well.
Yeah.
Yeah? So basically, she knows everything about the law when it comes to this, because we've been having some interesting chats in the green room. It's all very well, all these advancements happening, but what does that really mean for the law and making money out of it, which is something that I know very little about, so I'm very much looking forward to talking to you about that.
Sure.
And we've got Ed Newton, founder of Jukedeck, which basically means your technology, from what I understand, is writing music with a bit of help from humans. Your company also put on the first live concert entirely of songs co-written by machines in South Korea, right?
I don't know if it was the first, but it was a really fun one.
A1.
It was
a big
A1.
one.
Yeah, there was a
one.
lot of AI involved.
Yeah.
It was fun, and it was definitely in South Korea.
Yeah. So yeah. And your software trains deep neural networks to understand music composition at a granular level to help creativity, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I look forward to chatting. First of all, how did you come up with the idea of Musiio?
I like this story.
Yeah.
So basically, I was, as you mentioned, I've worked in music tech for a long time, about 12 years. And the previous company I was working for in Singapore, it was an app called BandLab, and it's basically SoundCloud and GarageBand smushed together. I don't work there anymore, so that reference stands.
Yeah.
And although when I was head of marketing, wouldn't have described it like that. But basically, what we would do is we would have users create music on the door online, and they would just upload music all the time. And so what we would try and do is playlist songs, playlist music that we could pin to the front page that would be a great experience for new users. Obviously, you want them to spend more time in the app. That's kind of the motivation. And I had a full-time music curator who used to report to me, and it was his job to listen to all the music that would get uploaded to the platform all day, every day. And some days he would, spend 8 hours listening to music, and he would come to me at the end of the day, Tangway, and he'd say, Hazel, I listened to 300 songs today, they were all shit. And I'd be like, don't worry about it, Tangway, we'll do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it would literally, sometimes that would go on for 3 days, and I thought, this doesn't seem very efficient. There must be a better way of curating this music. And the way I figured it is not necessarily to replace the role that Tangway is doing, but if he's listening to less than 2% of all the music that's uploaded, the ability to be able to at least filter it and go, maybe listen to these 50 songs first.
Yeah.
Either he can massively increase the amount of playlists he can build, therefore increasing the engagement on the site, or we can just automate the process to find better stuff. There'd be tons of stuff that was probably getting uploaded that was amazing that we just never found. So that kind of was the genesis of the idea. That's where I started and thought there just has to be a better way to automate and a better way to find great music. And then, I left and started my own company that did just that very specific part of the industry.
Yeah, because it was interesting. I was reading a quote from you in the TechCrunch article, which said Musiio won't replace the need to have people listening to music, but we can delete the inefficiencies. So you define the inefficiencies as like how much time we have, or what time is the inefficiency.
And so using the previous example, it's not that we wanted to get rid of Tangway. I've rehired Tangway, he's amazing. And it's not that we didn't want that, but what we decided was the work he's doing isn't efficient. So how do we just keep Tangway, still have a music curator, but just be able to funnel the information so that the work that he does is so much more efficient. You know, instead of one playlist every 4 days by listening to 300 songs a day, he can build 10 playlists a day because he has this funnel doing all the heavy lifting for him. And so that's kind of the inefficiency that we're trying to broker. And so for me, it's largely about as well, you know, the music industry for the artist has changed massively. You know, you could, if anyone has like an Android phone on them, like $100 phone, you can just download any beat making app. You could make a song, you could upload it to SoundCloud while you're sat right here. That's how an artist now has the ability to create. But the industry hasn't really changed how they discover or how they listen to music. So, you know, what was sort of 20 years ago, any artist you would need like $10,000, a recording studio, you would need a friend at a label, and now anyone with a smartphone can upload a song. But the industry hasn't updated how they listen to music.
So we all want to be more productive and more efficient, obviously.
Always.
And something that your company says it does is it acts as A&R, listening to songs and predicting which ones will be successful, and it can also detect the recording quality. But what about when artists have like purposely been creatively sort of brought down the quality level? Artists like Burial, who purposely make it sound a bit kind of old school and like, you know, do you think that something new and really exciting could get missed by your algorithm?
I think, you know, someone like J. Cole as well, who deliberately plays on that kind of lo-fi sound. So there's a whole, you know, training set of data that can be done on great talent but low quality audio. And, you know, an AI can tell the difference between a $50 mic and a $5,000 mic. And it can probably also tell the difference between intentionally low quality and artistic choice low quality and actual low quality. But I think one really great example we had was when I was testing the algorithm. We've got a partnership with a company called the FMA, the Free Music Archive, which is the largest database of music in the world under the Creative Commons license. So it's 120,000 songs. And I listened to 1,000 songs from their database, and there was one song, and it was a live studio recording by the Australian artist Kurt Vile. And the recording quality wasn't great. You know, it's just a live studio performance, so they probably just had 1 or 2 mics on him. But the quality of his voice and the quality of his playing and the songwriting was just undeniable. And so I identified that as like, this is amazing talent. And it turns out that our AI is actually really great at being able to distinguish between talent and recording quality. So that's just another layer, another factor to put on the top.
Yeah, so you said it probably will, but it might not, or
well,
you hope it will, or the more it does, the more
I mean, I guess I always try and avoid staying away from going, we will find the next big artist, the next Ed Sheeran, because you know, ultimately the technology is untested. But so what we're trying to do is act as a funnel. You know, have the ability to say, you know, if you can only listen to, you know, if there are 30,000 songs uploaded to Spotify every day, and you as an A&R person can only listen to maybe 10 or 20, you're definitely going to miss the good stuff. But if you can at least filter everything and at least have a shot at listening to everything, you increase your chance of finding the big hits. And maybe it's only a 99% increase instead of a 100% increase, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, because as a music fan, you know, I think that some of the most exciting music comes out of nowhere and it's unexpected and it's game-changing and it's something that's not on the radio.
Yeah.
You know, there's loads of examples of that, like Sam Smith, there wasn't really ballads around, that Gotcha tune, you know, somebody that I used to know. So I would just worry that, that it would miss that, it would miss the next curveball.
Well, I think as well, I was actually talking to someone about this yesterday, and even Sam Smith's music,
I know it sounds old, I mean that's just one example of the timing. You know?
Yeah, it could be a combination of, say, blues and reggae. It could be, you know, you can teach an AI to learn individual different things, and then it can also see patterns between them better than a human can. But also, so there's an element of that to it, but also as well, you know, we kind of have a slider on our product where we're like, how insane would you like our AI to go? Like, do you want it to really narrowly address what you've asked, or do you want us to throw you some curveballs?
Okay.
And each individual customer that uses our product seems to have a different taste for how wild they want it to be, and how different they want it to be. but also, yeah, you know, we can at least pick up the 99% of chances that you would miss trying to listen to it manually.
Okay, I'm feeling all right about it now.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Okay. Sophie, what is the most common question that you get asked by AI companies? As a lawyer. Obviously.
Yeah, that's the only
not too
field
generally.
of expertise I'm going to try to venture in
Yeah.
today. So it's almost always the same question. Not only AI companies, but anyone who is interested in AI and music will always come, and the first question they have is, can AI-generated music be protected by copyright? I mean, obviously what captures the attention of the wider public the most is when robots are starting to create music. There's obviously a lot of questions in relation to the kind of business model that you have, which is about listening to music. But I think what captures really the attention is when robots are creating music, or by the way, robots are now capable of creating paintings, of creating video games. So this is not just only an issue in the music industry, this is the creative industries in general. And the question is always, how does that work? Can copyright law embrace creation by a robot? And can you protect a creation by a robot using the same good old copyright laws that we have been using for centuries?
And can you?
Good question.
I knew you would get there eventually. So it's really interesting. When you look at copyright law, the way it has been written, it was definitely with the intention of having a human being at its center. And if you look at the international copyright laws, all the treaties and the conventions, but if you also look at copyright on a local basis, you will see that the reference of having a human at the center of copyright law is almost everywhere.
Okay.
So there are some challenges when you look at a music created by a machine in relation to that. One example, the duration of copyright law is 70 years after the death of the author of the author of the work. And when you have several authors, it's the death of the last surviving author. If you do not have an author, how do you calculate the duration of the copyright for a specific work? And that's just one example.
And how would you do that?
Well, that's a question that is still, I mean, the first question would be, before you even get there, are the different qualities that you need, or the different criteria that you need in order to say that, without doubt, a work is protected by copyright? Are those qualities reunited, and can you find them, or not? And the absence of an author is definitely a big challenge in relation to copyright law. That being said, if you look at the UK law, for example, the very interesting thing is that the Copyright and Design Act in the UK seems to have anticipated that more and more work would be created by machines. And you have in the UK law what we call a presumption, which is a legal fiction to say that when music is generated by a computer, the person who is deemed, so is taken to be the author, is the person by whom the arrangements have been made. So that presupposes that you would have someone who is doing arrangements. So you have to still be able to have a connection between a human being who is making arrangements, whatever that might mean, obviously, but you still have to have a human being and a machine working together. If the machine is completely disconnected from any human connection, then that article in the UK law will probably not be able to apply. But at least you have this presumption which has been created and which is something that you can use. You cannot say the same of other laws. If you look at French law, if you look at other continental laws in relation to copyright, the same connection between the arranger and the machine has not been made in such clear terms.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Does that cause a problem for you when you're working in London and in Paris, that the laws are different around these things?
For me, not really, but perhaps for the companies that I work with. So it's not really a problem. What I always say to the AI companies that come to see me in the field of the creative industries is that they need to be aware of those differences. They need to understand the environment and the landscape, and they need to understand that some environments might be more challenging than others, and also most of the businesses that we advise, they all work on a global basis, at least on a European basis first and then on a global basis. So sometimes they start in the US, but no one, almost no startup that I know of will come and see me and tell me, oh, we just want to work in the UK for now.
Yeah.
That never happens. So if you have global ambitions, then you need to have an understanding of the challenges that you're going to meet along the way. And it's really important to understand your local market. And when I say local, I immediately think European. For me, the local market for any company in Europe is definitely the European market.
Yeah.
And then you need to understand perhaps what's happening in the US, what's happening in China, what's happening in those other markets.
Obviously, you're on the cutting edge of how the law is changing around these things, but would you agree the facts are it's kind of, there's some things that are still ambiguous and it's always changing?
Yeah.
You know, so like the conversation we had before when you worked at Shazam about how the record labels tried to come down on you because they saw the stream, they saw each Shazam as a stream, but now it's completely changed, and that was only a few years ago, you know, so everything seems really malleable. Would you agree?
It is and it isn't, because at the end of the day, it seems from the outside, when you don't really understand what's happening, it always is difficult to understand how the law is going to apply to that. But once you break it down into very kind of small bites that are easy to understand and also that are relevant from a corporate law perspective. So if you look at AI-generated music, if you want to apply corporate law principles on top of it, you need to break it down into what is happening. So as we were discussing earlier, AI-generated music is first you need a really good algorithm and a learning algorithm who has this ability to learn from patterns. Second, you need a training set, which is a number of songs that you're going to feed your AI with so that the AI can learn from it.
And do you need permission from the people that made those songs?
And then third,
Yeah.
you also need sounds that the AI is going to use to put those sounds together in order to interpret the composition that the AI will have created, having listened to the data set that you feed it with. So when you have the algorithm, the training set, and the sounds, you can start, when you break it down in those three different components, you can start by asking questions that every corporate lawyer will understand. So you can then make it into something relatively easier to analyze. And that's what it is with if you go back to the Shazam example, that's exactly, it's the same process. You have to break it into small bites and understand what's happening at every stage. And then it most of the time becomes a more easier process to understand.
And the way you guys at Jukedeck get around that is you just use music that isn't copyrighted for your data set, right? Yeah. Okay. So you've already thought about that, considered it. And how is what you do different from human creativity?
How is what we do different from you? I think very different in many ways. I mean, part of the problem is that no one really knows what human creativity is, right? I mean, like, what do we count as creativity? You know, do we? So you mentioned Sam Smith earlier. You know, Sam Smith, "Stay With Me," amazingly creative song, we think, and then gets sued. I don't know quite how it ended up, but accidentally had possibly copied Tom Petty, an existing song, and and you listen to it, it's exactly the same tune. And so there are difficult questions I think that I won't answer because I can't about like what creativity is in humans. I think in systems like ours, there are interesting questions around how different is it to human creativity, but it's almost so different that we tend to focus more on like how it actually works. Because it obviously works at the moment in a pretty different way to how we learn music, right? When I learned to compose, I had years of lessons and would listen to lots of music over, 20, 30 years, and gradually build up these ideas and try things, and they're corrected because people say, no, that's awful, and that sort of thing. They said that a lot, actually. And now we're at a stage where with AI, what we're doing is as Sophie said, we're very much taking a data set. We're training neural networks to try to understand some of the mechanisms that go into making that data set, right? You're basically just getting it to look at note upon note, chord upon chord. And what you're trying to do is to get it to be able to predict, given, this is one way of it working, how we do it. You're trying to get it to predict, given a previous sequence of notes, what note is going to come next, essentially. So you're essentially teaching it sort of the basics of composition, but it's doing that with it doesn't understand what it's doing, right? It doesn't have any consciousness. It's not it's not getting in the kind of emotion that when I write a song, you know, for my wife or something, which I don't do regularly enough, sadly. You know, when I'm doing that, that's a really emotional thing, and this is just a, you know, it's a task. But it works to an extent, right? And it's not, you know, our systems, AI systems in general, this stuff are not as good at writing music as people. They don't get in the emotion. They're not yet as accomplished, but they can do something really, really useful, you know, and that's kind of what we focus on. So
Do you believe that composers need help from machines then?
No, I don't think they need help at all from machines. I think that machines can help composers. I think there are ways humans and AI can work together.
Okay.
So we do a bunch of different things. I mean, we focus on two areas. One area we focus on is helping non-musicians make music, people who don't have any compositional ability, people who've never had that kind of musical experience growing up, and we let them make music using our AI system. But on the other hand, we look at composers. We're building products now that use our AI technology to try to give them tools to help them if they want it. And this can be, we find this works in two ways. On the one hand, it's actually really interesting. When we were starting out, we released, our first product was a site for video creators. We still have this live. It's a site that lets a video creator make music using AI. You hardly have to input anything. You can say a genre, a duration, a mood, and it will make you a new piece of music, note by note, chord by chord. And so we did this for video creators, and we actually found that amateur musicians, people who really wanted to write music, were starting to use it very simply to create what's essentially a backing track for them. So they would create a track, they'd then download that, they'd write a tune, sing it over the top, and they'd then release that song on kind of YouTube. They'd record a music video, that sort of thing. And some of these people are starting to get quite a decent number of views, and they would write to us and they'd say, you know, this is amazing, I've never been able to write a song before. Now, sure, there are questions like, to what extent has that person written that song? It's a really interesting question, but as long as you feel like you're creating, we think that's like a really powerful thing. So we focus on that too.
I mean, it doesn't sound that far off like GarageBand or something, but if I was a composer, should I be worried that, you know, your software is just going to create, number one, put me out of work, and also kind of create generic sounding tunes, and then I'm going to have to go find another job?
So I'm a composer, and our team are all musicians actually, so we know a lot of composers. We generally find that people aren't too worried. Maybe they're just kind of being nice to us, but in general we find people aren't that worried, and I don't think they should be worried. I don't think composers should be worried, really for two reasons. One, because AI is so far off, you know, really doing what composers do. Maybe it'll happen. There are conversations happening today about artificial general intelligence and that sort of thing, and if we get to AGI, then, you know, we don't just want to talk about music, we should be talking about every job in the world. You know, I mean, literally it will be able to do any cognitive task, and that includes writing music. But we're a long way off it. But I think actually the more important thing is that even though let's say it happens at some stage, let's say AI can write music that's as good as people can write, right? Even if you get to that stage, music actually, and art in general, has this kind of hallowed position in human cognitive tasks, in that when we're consuming it, we actually don't care that much that, well, rather, we do care about where it's come from, right? So the fact that, you know, I might love Ed Sheeran, say, I quite like him, he's pretty good, but I might absolutely love Ed Sheeran, and I might love his backstory, I might love where he came from, which I actually do really respect, you know, he just like did years of living on sofas and things. If a machine wrote his tunes, would I listen to them as much as I listen to them because they're his? Absolutely not. What I care about in a big way is the story, and like our tech, other people's tech, doesn't have that story. So unlike many other jobs, like you know, you hear about truck drivers, that sort of thing, when AI can drive trucks as well as humans can, truck driving will probably not still be a job. But with music, however good AI gets, composing is, I think, always going to be, I think it'll be one of the last things that humans can probably do.
It sounds like you know, the next step in sort of AI generated ghostwriting or something, you know, that's like.
I think one of the ways it's kind of going is the idea that you could say go to upload your music to one of these platforms. Say a guy downloads your track from Jukedeck, sings over the top, goes to upload it to Spotify, and then Spotify build an AI that goes, if you change that middle eighth from a major to a minor key, you'll get 28% more views. And I think that's the kind of, that doesn't exist. But I think that's what they're going to try and do.
But then is that sad? Because the composer wants it like that in the first place. I don't know.
But
I have so many.
20%.
I have so many more questions, but I'm actually getting told that this is time. I think we're going to do a question and answer session afterwards. So if any of you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask us, we'll be around. Thank you so much to all my amazing speakers, Hazel, Sophie, and Ed. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.